057 podcast. I'm your host, Mike Cree, and today I've got Alex Tissot back on the podcast. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, no problem, no problem. So there's a few things that we want to talk about today. We're going to talk about the climate change. It went from, September 20th to the 27th?
Yep.
And we're going to talk about Colt stopping production on the AR-15 platform. And we'll talk about President Trump's Ukraine scandal.
Oh, man.
You kind of have to say scandal because then it doesn't really apply. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So why don't we start off with the AR-15. What is going on with that, man?
Yeah, so Colt, Firearms has decided to stop production, and they made an announcement that they will no longer be making the AR-15 platform for sale to civilians. Now, they'll still be making it for law enforcement and military, but they will be no longer selling it. And one of the things they were saying is basically there is such a saturation of those weapons on the market that they don't feel like there's any need to produce any more at this time. Now, they did throw in that this was not a permanent change. But one of the things I really like is that, they called it a modern sporting rifle, not an assault weapon, which I think it's more politically correct in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, do you think that it could also be maybe like a marketing tactic?
Well, that's what everybody's been asking, man. They're like, is this because of the mass shootings and they're trying to look more favorable? I think it's personally because of the pressure of making this rifle platform, and with the mass shootings, I think that is a part of it. They did say has no influence on their decision, that it's purely on marketing because sales have declined on that sort of rifle in the last few years, and they said they've got plenty of business to law enforcement and military, but I think it's a combination of both, But then if they say that, then they're going to be rallying up, all the gun advocates, and it's a very interesting move by Colt, in my opinion. Very interesting.
Yeah, I think that it'd be a kind of a smart idea because you could really grab some headlines from that, saying, yeah, we're going to stop making especially everything that's going on with the platform. When you say AR-15, people think you're talking about carrying around a minigun, and them even saying that, would probably put headlines everywhere.
Yep.
So is there any so that's all that they're going to stop making then?
That's no. They did say that they're going to stop producing rifles, including the AR-15. They didn't really specify what the other rifles were, but they did mention they didn't include only the AR-15 in what I read, which was from Time.
Wow. Are they going to stop? Are they going to sell the what they have now, or are they just completely what they have? They're just going to get rid of it, or they're going to maybe just save it for law enforcement and mill, or are they going to get rid of those weapons?
I think what's probably on and I don't know, but my guess would be is whatever's on the schedule, they're going to roll those out, and then they're going to only produce for military and law enforcement only, probably at a scheduled near date. And then they're just going to stop flowing out to the market for consumers, which means if you're a Colt fan, you better go run and get one.
What's their market share like? So who would you say are the top, who's the number one top AR-15 platform out there?
Man, well, I think they used to be. They're still very popular because they're used in military quite a bit. But there's a huge market now for more custom platform ARs, like like Daniel Defense makes a really nice one. There's a bunch of people who make ARs now. So I think that's another thing too, is they feel like the market's a little saturated, for what they do. But if you want to go fancy and you want something really like up there, I think there's definitely better platforms than a Colt. But Colt is, the good old reliable, and it's not cheap,
Old
but
trusty.
that's exactly what it is. It's not cheap, but it's not. I mean, it's probably half the price of like a Daniel Defense or something
Yeah.
like.
Or like Bravo Company USA.
Right, right.
Well, cool. Yeah, that's really interesting. I always look to see. I mean, I find marketing tactics to be interesting. Because sometimes they'll put like a company will put something out there like shock factor or what have you, and at one point you're like, wow, that's really offending, but at the same time it's like I'm talking about it with everybody, and then everybody's talking about that company, and then next thing you know, they're like, well, that's not really what we were intending on doing, but now that everybody's talking about it, we're kind of going to go with it, like the most interesting man in the world with Dos Equis. I always thought that was really, really great advertising because, you know, people think, I mean, generally thinking a lot of people when they hit 50, they think life is over, and you've got
Right.
this 62-year-old man sitting next to, two beautiful women telling stories about some of the things that he's done in his life. And the next thing you know, like old guys are sexy now, and now old guys are wearing suits, and they're walking around and it's pretty, I just thought it was really great marketing, and I thought that it was really funny, they really ran with it,
Yeah, 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 yeah. I like that.
So when did you pay attention to the climate talks at all?
So I listen to a lot of TED Talk,
Okay.
and I've seen it on the news, and there's just there's massive protests all around the world going on with climate change right now. It's quite interesting because the a lot of these protesters aren't even adults. They're a lot of children.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw this little girl. She looked like she was probably maybe, I don't know, 15,
Greta
16.
Thunberg, I think is her name.
You saw that
I did.
where she was getting heated. I mean, how
Yeah.
you and this is my future, and and I like I'm all for it. I love internal combustion engines, and I love my Mustang, and but in reality, the I think what they're saying is a fact. I think there is a climate change going on, and there's a lot of scientific studies that can back that up. But it's interesting. Is like, which way is it going to go? Are we finally going to get around to doing that? I know our country doesn't seem to be, as far as leadership wise, too concerned about it. I know some of the European countries are starting to really get into that, and with the summit meeting and all that stuff.
I think I can understand that because I've got some statistics to run off for you. I actually did a podcast on this months ago, but I'm going to read off a few pollution level statistics for you. And, it's funny. I mean, I agree with you. I believe that there is, I think that it's pretty ignorant to say that through the Industrial Revolution up until now, the testing that we did with nuclear weapons, that we have not had an impact on this planet. There are some people that are saying that, there's nothing going on, and I think that that's completely false. Now, I'm not going to say that it's the end of the world right now, but I will say that it's not as bad as say that, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is saying that it is. But I am saying that we have definitely changed the earth, since we've been here. And to say that we haven't, I think it's just completely irresponsible. But
Right.
I have air pollution statistics here, and the United States we do pollute, and I think that's to bring down our footprint. I think is a big deal. But as you mentioned, the European Union Union or the countries, they are more worried about it because in China, their air pollution levels there, they measure it on a PM level, PM 2.5 level. Okay, and
Right.
in Bakersfield, California, it's 18.2, which is the highest in the country. And Merced, California is 18.2, Fresno 17, Hanford 16.2, Los Angeles 15.3. Like you get the idea. These are the highest in the United States. In China, they are doing 155.2. In that's in Xingtai. In Shizang Huang 148.5, Baoding 127, Handan 127, Hengshui 120, Tangshan 114. The top like 10, they're in the hundreds, which is
Yeah.
unbelievable. And what's even more disconcerting is that India is even worse. Kanpur is at 173, Fardadabad is 172, Faransai is 151, Gaya is 149, and there are issues that people are seeing in these countries. Like there are kids that are having respiratory issues. And if,
Right.
if you were to even look on the internet what the pollution is like pictures of what it's like in these cities, man, it's like out of a movie, like out of an apocalyptic movie. It's unbelievable. So for this little girl to get on and saying that, yelling at the UN that that she's lost her childhood. Number one is being completely melodramatic,
Yep.
because there are kids out there that are in child slavery, that are working jobs in sweatshops, that don't have a childhood.
Yep.
There's children in war zones that grow up knowing war as kids, and there are children fighters in Africa. So for her to stand there and say that her childhood has been taken away from her is completely melodramatic, and I think the left eats that stuff up.
Of course they do.
And it's really unfortunate. Now, there should be pointed accusations. Instead of coming to the UN and yelling at everybody, she should have done her homework and said, hey, look, these are the top 10 countries that are being polluted the worst. Okay, and I want them all to be held accountable here in this meeting. And you name off who these people are, and then you have the UN come in and say, okay, look, what she's saying is true. These statistics are true, and we need to do something about it. Instead of just sitting there silent, letting her talk, and then that's it. Because that's essentially what's going to happen. She comes on, she does her spiel, she becomes a kid celebrity, like that other kid from was it Stone Douglas, he's like anti-guns and anti Second Amendment, and they're advocating for these causes, and yes, they are worthy causes, but I think that instead of just broadly going out there and saying, hey, maybe the gun industry, maybe pointing their questions or pointing their accusations or what they can do to change things more directly to the people in power. I don't know. How do you feel about it?
I agree with you 100%, man. And I mean, I think about my child and I think about her future, and I always wonder, what it's going to be like on this planet when she's 50 years old, or
Yeah.
when she's having kids and grandkids. As far as like the whole climate change thing with that little girl going ballistic, I completely agree with you 100%. And I think anytime you want anybody to take you seriously, you have to come up with facts and statistics. You have to have data to back up what you're saying, not just go all off emotion, because the emotional kind of attack or whatever it may be kind of will work, but it's not going to stick. It doesn't last. It gets everybody riled up, and then everybody will forget about it in a few days. But facts don't lie, and I remember your episode with all the statistics on India and China being the worst polluters, and it's kind of troubling for those people. I mean, you almost wonder, like, you know what percentage of these people are getting cancer. Like, I would love to see um, kind of like the health records of how all that that population's doing with all that smog and pollution.
Yeah, I think I might look into that.
Yeah, that should be pretty interesting, you know.
I mean, they always show people walking around with masks, but those paper masks aren't going to filter out, all of that stuff from getting into your lungs,
Yep, yep.
Um,
That's funny you mentioned the paper mask because I went to the gun range this morning. And there's a couple of they were Chinese, and she had a mask on while she was at the gun range,
oh, really?
like one of those nurse paper ones, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Huh. I think that's what they do when they're sick, but maybe she just didn't want to breathe in, the carbon. I don't know.
And it's not even that bad outside. If you go to like an indoor range, it's pretty potent. But when you're outside, it's really not too bad.
Nah, I love the smell of 45 in the morning.
Yeah, man. I just think that a lot of people, they go on TV, or they go out and they say their spiel, and then there's no solutions. They don't offer any solutions, or the solutions that they offer are completely like unrealistic. Like say
Right.
they come out, they're like, yeah, everybody has to start, or the United States needs to be 100% unreliant on fossil fuels in 5 years. It's like there's no way
Right.
that's even possible.
Right.
There's no way. They were mentioning the other day, they had a cop. A cop was they had a Tesla, a Tesla. He had a Tesla like P90D squat car, and they were chasing somebody, and it ran out of juice. you know, and it's like classic. It's like, of course it did. Of course it ran out of battery power, and the guy got away. And and
He was laughing.
you can laugh at that kind of stuff. I think that it's kind of funny, but I just don't think the world. I mean, our well, at least our country is ready to be 100% fossil fuel independent. I mean, I try to do my part, man. I use my iPad for like a notebook. I use the Apple Pencil to write down on stuff, and I use my iPad like as a notebook so that I don't use paper. So I try not to use papers. I mean, I don't know what difference it makes, but I'm consciously trying to do something. I don't drink out of plastic water bottles. I have a water bottle that I refill and stuff. So that's one thing I try to do to maybe personally lessen my footprint. Because you see these, you see pictures of or a video of plastic being washed up onto the beach, like beach shores and stuff like that, and animals caught in between the 6-pack. Or straws, and like I saw a video with this turtle that had a straw in its nose, and that stuff is, it's brutal to see, and I understand, but at the same time, it's like, where is that trash coming from, and where is this picture being taken at? Is that's not happening on Santa Monica Beach, that's not happening in Daytona Beach, that's happening somewhere, and I want to know where it is. It could be anywhere, but you typically don't see that kind of stuff. I'm not saying there isn't trash there, but I'm saying that the U.S. footprint, especially the strides that we've made in the past few years, it's not that detrimental as to where other places are where this stuff is unregulated. And I think that that's a start to identify where these things are unregulated, find out, how maybe some of these countries are dealing with their trash, what their recycle policies are, and then and implementing something.
I got the idea for the trash problem. Shoot that stuff to space, man.
Okay. I thought you were going to say burn it.
Nah, man, just shoot it into space, right?
Yeah.
Like, it might as well pollute. We're polluting the earth. Might as well pollute the space, and just shoot it out there. It'll keep going, right?
I mean, it is infinite. I mean, it's constantly expanding.
We got plenty of room out there, guys. Come on, just build a big shuttle, put all the trash in there, and just shoot it to space, man.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I read an article today about these scientists, and I'm obviously not going to quote it because I'm not as educated as these guys. But essentially, what they're doing is they're saying that travel from one point to another is possible through a wormhole because they're trying to create. What they're trying to do is they're creating they're creating these tiny black holes, and they're manipulating them with electromagnetic like magnets. And what they're doing is that they're twisting them, and then in twisting them, they're opening up like a gateway.
That's wild, man.
And you know what, man? When you hear about that kind of stuff, maybe climate change is like the last thing we should be worrying about, because these guys could be opening up a portal somewhere that's going to swallow the earth.
Right, right. Well, I saw another science thing where these scientists were showing how they were able to teleport a molecule from one place to another.
Wow.
That really happened. And they were, because they want to learn how to teleport people is basically the goal, right?
Yeah. Oh man, you're talking. Now we're talking.
I saw that. I was watching it late night on some like science channel, and I was watching these guys, and they had like these two different towers. I think they were about like 3 or 4 miles away from each other, and
Wow.
they literally like were able to teleport one molecule to another. I don't remember what kind of molecule it was, but it was really quite interesting. It made for good late night watching, you know.
See, and that's the kind of stuff, man. If I'm like, working on something and then I just happen to pull something up, that's the worst thing that can come on for me, man, because like that'll keep me up for another hour, because then I'll be looking it up. Okay, where is this at? Let's see what YouTube has. And of course, there's multiple videos of this stuff on YouTube, and then you just go down the rabbit hole.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, I love that stuff, man. And it was kind of interesting too, because they were talking about, well, what if we took they're trying to figure out if we took a person and we use the same technology, right? Would you be rearranged in the right, like,
Right.
would you be inside out by the time you get there?
Oh
Like, what would
man.
happen, you know?
Or what if
But
they like teleport you to like a different time? Like, well, I think there's like a T-Mobile or a Sprint commercial out now, or this kid's she's at a like a talent like a science fair, and she has like a time displacement device, and she has like people coming out from like feudal Japan and dinosaurs and stuff, and then stuff from the future.
Genghis Khan shows up.
Yeah, that's the last thing we need. One of the
Uh,
I'm reading a comic series right now. It's I don't know how much you are into comics, but it's kind of like a distressor for me. And I'm reading the House of X and Powers of X, and it's incredibly interesting, man. This guy, they're kind of like restarting like an X-Men, doing like a big X-Men run, and some of it is about, I don't want to ruin, if anybody's listening and they're reading it and haven't read it yet, I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but it's really interesting, and some of the stuff that we're talking about is kind of involved in the series, and
yeah,
it's really good. I don't know if you like reading that kind of stuff, you should check it out, man.
definitely, definitely. I was
So
watching some.
apparently, President Trump is in hot water. Nancy Pelosi is starting an impeachment inquiry, and
Oh,
I don't know where this is going to go. Is it a witch hunt? Is it true? Is it false? What's going on?
do you think that they're so Biden, right? Like, his chances of becoming president right now, I think, out of the Democrats, is has dropped a little bit over the years, right?
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I've heard multiple reports. I've heard that he's doing good, and then I've heard that he's dropping.
so if he's dropping, maybe this whole thing is to kind of bring him. I'm wondering if the Democrats are throwing him under the bus to push the next candidate up.
Mm.
Wondering.
It's not like they haven't done that before.
Right. They're like, you're going down anyways. You're not gonna make it.
Yeah.
Screw. Let's let's take you and Trump out all in one shot.
It's like, hey, Joe, we did this to Bernie a few years ago, and we can't do it to him twice. So you gotta take one for the team here, pal.
Yeah, that's what I'm feeling right now. Poor Bernie, man. He's so old. Like, and I like the guy so much, but I heard he's running again. I'm like, man, I think he's like surpassed his time. I don't think, you know, Ah,
He had a good podcast with Joe Rogan. And to be honest with you, I think all presidential candidates, they absolutely need to do like a podcast circuit,
yeah,
because they need to sit down and talk about their ideas and talk about, what they want to do and their changes, and they need to talk to somebody that is not on the payroll. They need to talk to somebody that is going to ask them, uncensored questions about tough issues and tough problems, and they need to stand there and answer them, because I think the debates are a complete circus. They're a circus for their base, and the people that are tied to that base. So I'm talking about the people that were like, I was born a Democrat. My dad was a Democrat. My grandfather was a Democrat. I'm a Democrat. It doesn't matter what anybody says from the other side, whether it's logical or not. I'm going to vote Democrat. And then obviously there's the same on the flip side of the coin, and I think that it's a small demographic, but they do have a demographic of people that do that. But I do believe that there's people in the middle that are, you can consider them left leaning conservatives or right leaning liberals, and we need to get the information from these people. Like Andrew Yang was on Joe Rogan, and he went into detail about his programs, and Bernie has gone on there as well. And I'm not saying Joe Rogan's the only guy, but it needs to be somebody like him, who doesn't give a shit, because what I mean by that is that he's going to ask questions that he thinks that are important, and he's going to ask questions that he's going to think that they need to answer. And it needs to be somebody that, and he doesn't have anything to lose. I mean, he has a lot to lose, but they're not going to take it from him. He's too popular. He's way too popular on YouTube. His podcast is too popular. He's too popular on MMA for him to be silenced. And it needs to be somebody like that. So I mean, I completely went off of a subject because we were talking about Joe Biden, but that's what I think needs to happen with the debates. They need to scrap the debates, and there needs to be. They need to have these people on podcast. I mean, but back to President Trump.
So what do you think, man?
What's that?
What do you think, man?
About what?
What do you think about this whole thing? You think? Yeah, I mean, do you think that President Trump is on grounds for impeachment, even with doing what he did?
I'm going to say that whether he's guilty or not, he's not the first person to do this. So, is this, we're going to burn him because he got caught, or is this, some kind of like political sabotage? But you can't tell me that he's the first person to to do this stuff.
Of course not.
And that's and actually that's my point, is that okay, so maybe he did do it, and maybe it's true. I don't believe that he's the first person to do it. And that being said, there's been other people that have done it, and there's been other people that have corrupted this system, that you can't just throw him under the bus and say, okay, we're going to do this to you, but there's other people running around. I mean, who knows? Anybody could have done this. Maybe President Obama did this. I'm not saying that he did. I'm saying that there's a possibility. I mean, nobody goes into the White House and comes out clean. Do you know what I mean? And I think that that's something that people need to accept, that when you become president, you do things and you have to make hard decisions and tough decisions about things that, yes, people aren't going to agree with, but you're also going to have to make these decisions about things that people aren't going to know about. And
Right.
And those hard decisions are going to be things that maybe you can live with, maybe you can't live with. For example, and you can't change the rhetoric later on. So say, President Obama, he thinks that people shouldn't make a certain amount of money, or that people who make a certain amount of money, they should be taxed, accordingly. And I agree with that. And they run with this idea that the elite, the millionaire elite, the billionaire elite are scum, and that they are and we need to tax them, and they're living on cloud nine, and it's not fair to everybody else. But at the same time, on the other end, he gets a $60 million deal from Netflix to to do films and produce films for them, and he buys $15 million beachfront property. So if they're saying what it is about climate change, that, to move away from the shores because they're going to be, because water levels are rising, why is, President Obama buying beachfront property? And it's not that I have anything against him making $60 million from Netflix, and it's not that I have anything against him spending $15 million on beachfront property to enjoy his life, or how much money he makes. It's not about that. It's that you and your base can't say that certain people can't live the high life, while you're on the other hand, you're going off and living the high life yourself.
Right. No, I totally agree with that.
So is President Trump is he out there for impeachment? Maybe.
Well, what's interesting about that whole thing? So the whistleblower, right? Which was a CIA agent, right? So that guy just went in. He just happened to go and sub in for another guy for about 3 days, and then he gets back to the CIA, and then this stuff comes out. Like, isn't that kind of like suspicious, right? Like,
yeah,
he was just supposed to be a temp, and all of a sudden he ends up being the guy blowing the whistle.
Yeah, it sounds like domestic espionage. It sounds like an operation on the CIA against the administration, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it does. Hell yeah, it does. I mean, and oh God, we've said too much. It's not safe.
I know. And, the CIA working inside the United States, that's supposed to be illegal, So,
right.
I mean, I guess take that as it may. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, man. I kind of put those two together, and I was like, interesting, but I always thought of the CIA as kind of like, they kind of do their own thing, and I think they've always had this kind of thing between, like, the president, you stay out of my way, we stay out of yours, kind of relationship, I guess.
Yeah.
Don't look into what I'm doing, I do what I want, and you guys, they do what you want to do,
Yeah, and the NSA is like, don't worry, we're not even here.
Right.
We're everywhere, but we're nowhere at the same time,
Exactly. I mean, there could definitely be some stuff going on there, but I want to be alive, and so I'm not going to talk anymore about that.
Well, cool, man. I really appreciate you coming back on the podcast, man. We'll definitely do more of these. This is fun. Just throwing out a couple issues that's going on and kind of bullshit about it. That's always fun.
Yes.
Guys, if you are not subscribed to Alex's YouTube channel, go ahead and do it. Alex, why don't you throw out your Instagram and your YouTube channel?
Oh, yeah. So if you guys are into pocket knives or just want to check it out, just look at one episode or something, you can find me on Instagram under Alex_knifebox. And on YouTube, I'm just Alex's Knife Box with the apostrophe in there. So you guys can check me out if you guys are into that sort of thing. And, thanks for having me back on Podcast 57. I love this podcast. I've listened to all of them. And it's a pleasure and an honor to be back on, man.
Awesome, man. Thanks. Thanks again for coming back on. That's all we got for you guys today. This is Pri and Alex out.